Welcome, everyone, to another episode with JJ and Doug.
I promise not to fall asleep. I promise not to fall asleep.
Of women, men, and relationships that we're actually recording from bed.
This is the most interesting way to podcast ever. You have very interesting pajamas, JJ Flizanes.
Thank you, Doug Sandler. We didn't podcast from, yes, we did, from bed with Strickland once doing
Wait,
one of your...
We had a three-way?
Well, no, Strickland was at an Airbnb in El Segundo, and we were at a friend's house in Westchester, and I was a part of that episode for Nice Guys, and you and I were sort of laying in bed and having using one of these mics. So I love this little gadget because you don't need to have a computer or the headphones, and I thought, you know what, it's late, and we're winding down.
And you really don't even need to have a brain to podcast.
Oh, well, I hope that everyone realizes that we do have brains, and I wouldn't want to have a conversation and publish it online if it was not worth having.
Wait a minute. Hold on a second. I have 740 episodes of me not doing any brain on the Nice Guys on Business podcast.
You know, you have two personalities. It's called the Monday, Wednesday, Friday personality of Doug Sandler, who's very... For those of you that have not heard Doug's show, the Nice Guys on Business podcast, they do 5 days a week with some bonus episodes sometimes. And Doug is his very customer service, friendly, nice guy, business, straight-laced for the most part self.
Who the fuck is that guy?
Exactly. And then you listen to Tuesdays and Thursdays, and you're like, who is that? Because he's not that. But as we digress, we're actually going to talk about today the review of the show. Hopefully, most of you heard on Tuesday, which was my interview with Harville Hendrix.
Whoa, it was amazing. JJ, you know, I'm not an avid podcast listener. You know that I make my entire career as a podcast producer, and I don't listen to. I love podcasting. I love the whole idea of podcasting, but I don't listen to a lot of podcasts. I don't have a lot of time. But I listened today to your episode with Harville Hendrix, and holy shit, girl, you know your stuff. I love it. I definitely got made just to watch JJ right now. She's lying in bed. She's got her pajamas on. Her two cats. This is a room filled with pussy. Her two cats.
Oh!
Her two cats.
Well, if this wasn't already explicit.
Her two cats are doing all sorts of silly things, and she's got right next to her bed, she's got a spray bottle with water, and her cats do not like to be sprayed with water.
You don't have to give the play-by-play. You really could. I can focus on the fact that you were talking about how good I am at podcasting and how much I know on my stuff, and you listen to my show with Harville Hendrix. So let's go back to that topic.
I'm just concerned what's going to happen when you actually turn that spray bottle on me one day. What's going to happen?
Just behave, and we won't have to go there.
Okay, I promise to behave, JJ. So anyway, I was listening to that episode today. Thank you, by the way, for sending me the reminder. I had already been listening to it for 15 minutes when you sent it to me. I'm like, holy shit, okay, the Harville Hendrix episode's coming out today. Holy shit, okay, I'm going to listen. I'm not going to forget. Doug is not going to forget. Memo to Doug, do not forget. And you know what? I did not forget.
And I wouldn't have been upset if you did. I just...
Much. There comes the spray bottle out for me.
Okay, let's get back.
Okay.
So... Actually, I was looking for your show today, and I couldn't find it. And so I thought, well, heck, I'll listen to my own show again today. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to send this to a bunch of people on a text message who I'm connected to on my iPad.
Well, hold on a second. What happened to my show?
I couldn't find it it was on Overcast, but I could not find it on iTunes. I kept refreshing, and today's show did not appear for the longest time, and so I gave up.
It's fine. 2 million downloads later. Save the downloads.
I'll just listen to it on Thursday. It's fine. And and when you're gone this weekend. Or when I'm traveling. Back to Harville Hendrix. And, you know, I wanted to share it because as you know, after I added it on Monday, I said this on the show.
You were yelling at yourself as you're editing your show, by the way. It's always a good sign when you're re-listening to an episode, an interview that you've done, and you're like cursing at yourself in the computer. What was going on there, JJ?
I don't know.
You're a little angry with yourself, I think.
I don't know. I don't remember. I just know that, like I said in the intro to the show, I had a different perspective on some of the things. Not profoundly different. It wasn't like when I had the show with him, I didn't like. I picked up on one thing, and then when I edited this week, I picked up on something completely different. It was more of the excitement and the adrenaline of, and we were on video, of interviewing him. I was completely present. I was completely ready and with him. And then when I went back to edit and I was just listening, because I haven't done the video yet, there's a lot of, he's clearing his throat a lot. I want to tell Harville to stop eating dairy because he cleared his throat a lot. And so I got to edit that out of the audio, which was perfect.
Oh, yeah, because I didn't hear him clear his throat even once. You made a remark
He
about
did
that.
it. He did it a couple times, but it was too close to cut it. But there were several times where he did it in a perfect place to take it out of the audio. I'm not going to be able to take it out of the video, I don't think. So as I'm listening to him and not having to watch or worry about what the background looks like, it just penetrated me a little differently, and I really took some mental notes about my own responsibility for my marriage, for my relationship, for what, I have this idea of what I think I did, and I have a pretty good understanding. And I know I have lots of friends, and even you guys who've been listening to me for a while, not that I've been so open about everything that's been going on, but you can look at the shows and you can see the patterns, you can see what gets me excited and the conversations that I'm having, and know that, okay, something must be going on for her too at some point to be having the programming that she has. And so I just started to reflect and get a little nervous about, am I accurate about all the things that I think I did? Did I do that well, or didn't I do that well?
I have one key takeaway that is playing over and over and over and over again in my head, and that is we choose our partners to heal the wounds of our past. I just keep hearing that over and over and over again, and it is so true. It is eerily true about looking back to the relationships I've had in my life, whether they are relationships, close relationships with a significant other, wives, girlfriends, or close friends that I've also chosen too. I choose my friendships and choose my relationships to heal the wounds of my past. And yikes, it just sends that shiver up my spine.
Well, I've been saying that phrase for years. So when I started the show off and I wanted to just get his approval, am I being accurate? Because that's what I've been saying for literally 12 years, 14 years. And for him to say yes, I'm like, okay, good. That's perfect. That's the concept. And then there's the application of the concept. And I know for a lot of you, maybe you haven't heard the whole thing yet, or maybe you've just listened to it once. I'd love your feedback on what you learned, what might be sticking with you in a way that is either comfortable or uncomfortable, any aha moments. I mean, even back when we recorded the show, I remember, back in my own relationship, one of the comments was, well, if I don't feel it, I don't want to do it. Mm-hmm. And when I didn't even ask that and Harville brought it up, it was so perfect that he mentioned that. And I thought, oh my God, that is such a piece. And to go over the brain chemistry of how we create new neural pathways.
I want to spend a moment on that, because I think this is so important in how to salvage a relationship or salvage something that you think is over, or how to find clarity in a confusing situation, or how to correct a behavior. When one of the greatest lines in the entire interview, it was something like when Harville said, it's like, you can't do this alone. You can't. How does it go? If you go to therapy thinking that you're alone, thinking that your partner at home is going to change, that's the wrong person that's going to change, because you're in therapy. You need to be the one that's going to change.
And what's even funny is that I don't remember that line. It's, this is back to the whole frequency and law of attraction conversation. We hear wherever we are, like whatever frequency we're on is the information that we receive. So the fact that you just said that, and you said that earlier today, mm-hmm. and I remember thinking, and I've heard the show now 2.5 times, and I was thinking to myself, when did he say that? Like, I don't remember hearing that, because you picked up on it, because it was for you in alignment with what you needed to hear. And for me, of course, because I was asking the questions and I was trying to direct some of it, I wanted him to do whatever he did so perfectly. Mm-hmm. It's probably the one interview that I've talked the least, which I was happy to do. I just wanted to have the container of the the topic, and then ask a few key questions. And so for those of you that know what's been going on, you could hear me asking about the two situations, right? So my marriage and then you, right? And sort of getting clarity and clarification, even validation on what our relationship, on what happened in my marriage. So for me, that was a huge part of like me getting therapy from Harville without being too open about what was going on. And so the rest of it was like bonus from him talking about, a lot of people think and feel. And this is this is a really big thing for me. I hate this. I hate when people say, well, I don't feel like it.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's what we were getting to before. It's like, holy shit. You don't feel like it. You don't feel so in other words, what you're saying is you're not willing to work at this relationship. You don't feel like it. So talk about Harville's response when someone says something like, well, I don't, and I'm not saying that they necessarily have to say those words, well, I don't feel like it, or I don't, maybe it's, I don't see myself doing that, or I'm not comfortable with that, or something like that, to say that in order to fix a relationship, I'm not willing to, or I'm not sure I know how to come to that part. Like, I think he used the example that he is not a physical person. He's not a hugger.
He was saying that as an example. He was saying, maybe I'm not a physical person. He was using himself, not to say he himself wasn't a physical person, but he's saying, if your partner wants you to say it more emphatically and they want you to hug them harder and more enthusiastically, and then you say, well, I just don't do that. I don't wash windows. Right?
Right. That was funny. That was funny.
So it's the two-part thing of when people say, I don't feel it. Well, okay. So on a show here in the near future, we will revisit the anatomy of emotion. And the anatomy of emotion very quickly goes like this. Emotions don't just happen. They're not random. You have a thought or you observe something. And from there, those thoughts or observation will be interpreted either subconsciously or consciously or both. And based on your interpretation, you will have a feeling. That is how a feeling happens. You don't just catch it in the air. You guys, right? All right. You have to be on a frequency to be in alignment with that feeling. But in terms of situationally, it's about your relationship to the interpretation about the situation. So we have that, I've had friends in the past say, well, let's say, for instance, in a marriage that's going towards divorce, and have someone say, either partner, well, he or she doesn't make me happy. Mm. And my first response has always been, it's not their job to make you happy. No one can make you happy but you.
Okay, now I get that, and I understand that, and I believe that. It's up to you to be happy. But it's their behavior that is contributing to some discord. So how do you get around that? And I'm taking just the controversial, the opposing side here. I kind of know the answers, but how do you fix that? How do you fix that when your partner is not willing to step up to do the things that they need to do in order to make the relationship better? How is it that they're not making you happy, but they're also not making you sad? It's your own feeling. So how do you deal with that?
Well, obviously, if you've listened to any of my Spirit, Purpose, and Energy shows or any of the Law of Attraction shows, and I know we're on women, men, and relationships right now, but if you bounce back and forth, which I hope a lot of you will, there's a, Law of Attraction is, to me, it's a fact. It's physics. So when we look at how it's not even possible to make somebody else happy. Can you contribute to situations? Will they interpret it well and they'll have a good response?
What would Abraham say?
You're the creator of your own reality.
Exactly.
So if I'm the creator of my own reality, I'm the one who has to drive the bus. I'm the one who's on the frequency to receive the information and the feelings and the vibrations of that frequency. So if I'm in a bad place and I have 10 people standing on their head to try to make me happy and it doesn't work, it's not their fault.
Okay, but how do you go through a shitstorm saying, I love it, I love it, I love it, I love it? It's just not realistic.
You make peace with it. Well, that's a whole show or 10 about how to take any situation and take responsibility for your interpretation. If you look at something from the position of this is what has happened. This happened, this happened, this was said, and you take away the emotion, take away the interpretation, and just go with the facts. What happened? What are you observing? And actually, in psychology, there is a position called the observer. When you can become the observer of your thoughts, when you can become the observer of your feelings or your reactions, you have more power to influence how you then choose to react, how you choose to talk to yourself, how you choose to continue the story that you might have started based on a whole bunch of facts that don't necessarily add up to the interpretation that you're making. And what people don't understand on one level is that we're always interpreting, but we're interpreting based on where we are in our frequency and what's happened to us. And everyone looks at the world differently and everyone's coming at it differently. But people say, but that's what happened. Well, that's what that person saw and that's what that person felt, but that doesn't mean that's what happened.
Okay, so get back to for the moment, just so we can to put some closure on this. So you're dealing in a situation where you're expecting something from your significant other, and your significant other just says something like, I need to feel it. I need to feel it. So how in counseling what did Harville say about that?
Harville talked about, so let's say, you're in couples therapy and one person, just like he said, he was talking about a couple, and one woman, it was a woman, the man, doesn't really matter, wanted more physical attention and wanted more emotion. But let's just say for sake of simplicity, the man said, well, I don't do that. I don't do that because that's not who I am. Oh, I hate that word too. I hate that phrase too. Who you are is who you have learned who to become based on all the negative experiences in your life and based on a whole bunch of other things. But you can change who and how you do things at any point in your life if you so desire. So everyone, stop using that. Well, that's just not who I am. You can say that's not what I prefer, but if you would like to change it, you can. You're not a victim to circumstance.
Well, what happens, and again, let me play devil's advocate for a second. What happens when you get I'll take myself in this situation. We've talked about this as we've been driving before, and one of the things we shared is that, there's certain things that I just don't want to do. I've earned a position in my life where I just don't want to be there. I just don't want to do that. I'm just not in the same position I was 15 years ago at 35 that I am at 50 something.
Yeah, I get that. And you can absolutely decide you don't want to do those things. And there also may be consequences for you because you don't want to do those things that you may or may not like. So in the situation of a relationship where at the time you were not talking about something between us, I think it was...
I was not talking about something between us.
Okay, well, let's say it was something between us.
Well, then I have another decision I have to make. How important am I weighing your significance into the decision-making process?
And I don't mean to make this sound like I would be or someone should be demanding and saying, well, you should do this. There's not a shoulding happening here. I just want to make sure people understand where your power lies and to stop giving away your power by saying things like, well, that's just not who I am, or I'm not going to do it till I feel it, or I just don't feel it, or that person doesn't make me happy anymore. Those are all very victim statements that indicate that you don't own your own power and that you're creating the reality that you want based on what you believe. So back to what Harville said in terms of the why you want to, if your partners decide that, it's a give and take. And that's why I love IMAGO therapy, is because you uncover that we both have wounds. We both want to heal those wounds. And through couples therapy like IMAGO, with this awareness of what we didn't get from our caregivers, we can help each other heal those wounds. It's not this person did something really bad and I'm in therapy because they need to change. It levels the playing field. And so when you have that power to level the playing field and know that both people have stuff to work on, that's what I love about this work. The next step is if the person says, well, you need more physical attention, but I just can't do that. Well, Harville laid out that basically that is your own defense mechanism from childhood, that you became less of who you really are, which is also another very Abraham saying, by the way. It became less of who you are based on your caretaker's response to you, and that was a self-preservation. And in order for you to become more whole and for your partner to be healed, you have to decide that you're going to break through that resistance and push back into it and be into it. Like there's a saying that, in order to break through, you have to break down to break through. Like you have to go through it. You have to feel it to heal it. You have to be able to push against it to say, you know what, I'm going to do it. And he said, if you do it often enough, and I believe it's 30 to 60 days, if you did it every day from, somewhere between 30 and 60 days, that your brain chemistry starts to change and you create new neural pathways and you actually start to connect into those feelings where you didn't have them before, and now you do.
Which creates a whole different frequency.
Yep.
Now you're at the same frequency as the person that it was absent that behavior before, and now a lot of things start to click because you're clicking at that same frequency. You're at the same spot where your partner is, and it's a beautiful thing. It's becoming the hugger in a non-hugging environment where where your partner needs more physical attention, you provide it. And because of that, they are appreciative of that, and they're willing to probably help you by doing something that is something that they feel they're being deprived of.
So what I loved about his examples in those situations and what he also pointed out was that it's not even that like the person who needs the physical attention and the person who doesn't want to give it, that the person who doesn't want to give it is giving it like they're a martyr and they're giving it to that person to help them. What he was saying is that the person who is giving it is also healing themselves. Mm-hmm. That the thing that their partner needs the most from them is the thing that they also need to replace in a wholeness in themselves.
Okay, so is that we choose our partners to heal the wounds of our past. Now, what in that particular case, what is the wound that we are healing? Are we healing the wound of not having the physical touch of someone from a caregiver's perspective, or is it something else? Or is it not related to this at all?
Well, I'm sure it's related, but we didn't get the specs. I mean, you and I have both done the exercises, and we haven't reviewed them yet together in person. But I think that you can't necessarily assume without knowing the backstory. Like, I think when it came to your stuff before you did the exercises, I had an idea about what it was going to be. For me, I'll be honest, I didn't know what it was going to be. When I started doing the exercises, I was as curious. I mean, when I first learned about this work and started looking at myself in a reflective way to think, well, what is the wound I have to heal? Why did I choose my husband? What is it that I need to work on? And what is it that I'm trying to heal? I really didn't know. Mm-hmm. I have very supportive parents. I was very supported. I wasn't physically abused. I wasn't verbally abused. I knew I was loved. Minus some nagging and some OCD here and there and a little bit of clutter in the house, right? I was like, I don't know what I need to heal. And I started to guess over the years what it was. And I came up with some good stuff, but none of it, when push came to shove, showed up in that IMAGO therapy exercise.
It was easy for me. Abandonment all the way through from my dad who left my mom at when I was 2 to my soon-to-be ex-wife who walked out of the marriage. I mean, it was quite easy for me to determine what the wounds of my past were.
And I think, well, definitely newly, I've got abandonment issues as well. I know that you and I have that thread in common for sure, because even though I have been in a marriage, all the needs that I would like to have had were not being met, and vice versa. I'm sure he feels the same way. I'm sure he feels like I abandoned him, even though I worked really hard not to, and it wasn't being accepted or translated in a meaningful way, which is why we are where we are. But what I think scared me the most today or yesterday listening to the show as I was editing was that I'm not any different today or in the last 5 months that you and I have been together than I was 4 months ago, 6 months ago, maybe even a year and a half ago. And minus the IMAGO exercise, which definitely was a game changer for me, and that happened last year. But besides that, I'm the same person. And me as a person had the way my other person responded was really bad. And then I was not being received. What I was trying to do was being received not well. And wasn't being, it's not about being acknowledged. It just wasn't being received. Like when you try to love somebody in a love language that they don't have, right? They don't feel the love because it's not a love language that they care about or that they connect to. And here I am being the same person with you, and I get a completely different response. And so, there's a little fear in obviously this for me of trust, and I know that we'll work on it, and you're in that place to do that work.
Yeah, why is that so though? I was listening to, we had a conversation about this today, and I'm curious what the answer is. Now, why would that create fear instead of create a level of relief?
Because I was so sure. I was so sure about all of this. I was so sure that I chose my husband to heal the wounds of my past, and vice versa. And I knew that was something that could be dealt with, and it would transform.
Yeah, but he had to step up. He had to, just like the example of you going to therapy thinking that your husband will change. The only thing that can change is you when you're in therapy, unless your partner is willing to change.
Right, but what Harville also said is that one person can make a big difference in a marriage. And if you are willing to change, and I was willing to change, and I was willing to grow, I was willing to take every situation of what could I heal in this situation? When I'm defensive, let's see. Well, what's another option other than defensiveness? Well, that means I have a wound. I have a trigger. When somebody yells at me, I'm defensive. So I went and I worked on defensiveness, and I worked on being wrong, and I worked on my insecurity around being wrong, because I spend so much time trying to learn things to not be wrong. So I worked with hypnosis, I did EMDR, and I actually felt a huge shift when I did all that. So, and I teach this in Law of Attraction. If you expect someone to show up in a negative way, and that's the frequency you're tuned into, it's exactly what you're going to notice about that person. But when you start doing your work, and in fact, who did this? Somebody that I just had a session with did it the other day, and boom, it worked. Actually, two people in the last month that I have had coaching sessions with their spouse. They weren't in good marriages. Oh, I know exactly who it is. Okay, sorry, now it's coming very clear to me. I just don't want, I'm not going to name names. But these people did, I said, here's the only thing you can do is to make peace with where you are, to really get into what you believe about what you can have, let go of who it's going to be with, and also in your current situation, just focus on the positive parts of that person. Not necessarily in relationship to you, but maybe, what do you appreciate about that person? Let's say it's the husband. What do you appreciate about your husband separate from you that you truly, truly enjoy or appreciate? Don't make it up. Don't lie. Be honest. And then what can you really appreciate about the relationship that you have? And when you start there, you start tuning into a different frequency. And with two people in lightning speed time, their relationships have shifted because they were tuned to a different frequency. So you as an individual can make a huge shift in your own relationship. It's whether or not, as Harville said, I don't know if anybody remembers this part, because obviously this was about me. He said, there are two choices of what could happen in that situation. The person feels you being different and then gets curious about what you've done and responds appropriately. And from that point, maybe there's a connection that's had. And from there, maybe that person's interested in, I'm interested, and let's look at this further, and let's go down this path. The other was that the person is confused, and it triggers anxiety.
And what's interesting about the two relationships that we are both just coming out of right now, in your relationship, your significant other was not willing to take the action in order to meet you at your frequency, and my partner wasn't even willing to check in. I mean, she completely checked out, just left. So you can't get blood from a stone. I think that you put a lot of pressure on yourself in that fear that you have that might say, well, I'm doing the same thing I've always done. Why didn't it work with him, and why is it going to work with you? You're putting too much weight on just you. You have a partner now that's willing to step up. And in my case, I had a partner that wasn't willing to even get to the table. There was no, let's go to counseling. No, I've made up my mind. You know how I am when I make up my mind. It's over. Like, well, fuck that. I mean, that's pretty cold. Let's take 7 years of a relationship and just throw it down the tubes. So for me, and for you, completely different ends of the spectrum, but the same result in that we had partners that weren't willing to try.
Well, okay, let me, because just in case anyone's listening to this that knows them both, or in the case that they're listening to this, I do want to give some credit to, and let's talk about this frequency position, right? So in your case, yes, there's a lot of like, that's pretty cowardly. What happened to you? That didn't happen to me. There was years of trying in different ways, right? So, but but again, there's a different frequency and there's a decision to be made, and people have resistance that they're unwilling to acknowledge. There's a lack of consciousness, and there's some deep habits and patterns that people are unwilling to let go of, because for them it's their reality. Like, I remember a time where there was a lot of change, and that change felt unstable. And so for some people, they say, stop, I don't know who I am anymore. This isn't, and then they take that to mean, you didn't like me for who I was. I'm not good enough. Therefore, I'm going to put my foot down in every way, shape, and form and rebel against everything, because I feel like all you want me to do is change. Versus, I think you hear this whole, we choose our partners to heal the wounds of our past, which means I'm not judging you in terms of, I'm not saying, okay, Doug, you need to change so that I feel better, or to meet me, or to be with me. I'm saying we both have stuff we can help each other with. I see it as an opportunity, but not everybody does that. And so there's a different interpretation. Again, I'll just go back to that everyone learns their lessons in the time that they need to learn them. And that's why I did the whole show called Sacred Contracts, which led us to today with this relationship and us being on this show together on the second day during the week, was to be able to say that because I believe that completely, that we choose our parents, we choose how we come, we choose what happens when we're here, we choose how we're going to go. And I have to believe, because I have, in one way, exhausted all possibilities and all answers. And from a position of, let's say, psychological accuracy, I could lay this all out in a neat little graph to show you every single little thing. And guess what? I'd be right. But right didn't get me happy. And right didn't get me the result I wanted, because it negated some of the things I need to learn, which I'm starting to realize. I'm starting to see some of the things that I will be an interesting journey with you, because I'm starting to see them even more clearly now. Some of the things that I didn't learn that I thought maybe I did.
What I love, again, this is something that you have taught me, and I've said this many times, and I know that this is something that you enjoy when I say, so I will repeat it here so everybody can hear it. What if it was all just divinely scripted this way, so that everything happens for a reason, everything fell perfectly into place? There is no way that I would be here with you in this circumstance right now had everything not fallen exactly in position the way that it did. And while that created a huge amount of pain and heartache for me to get here, without that pain and that heartache, I would not be here. So while it's a horrible thing to having had gone through, and I would not have wished it upon my worst enemy, I would wish this for anyone, to be able to have a life that you can finally say, man, I really feel like I've gotten here for a reason. And so much growth in just the last few months, so much growth, so much of that. I want to find myself and figure out some things that I have not actually understood. And the other side of it too, which is again amazing to me, is that for 52 years of my life, 53 years probably, I have been completely unconscious. And it's only been this year that I am actually purposely going through life, consciously going through life. Yes, I've set goals in my day. Yes, I've been successful in my day. Yes, I've had to create my own opportunity. But to truly be awake, I didn't even understand what that meant until recently.
Yeah, I know. I agree. I'm like probably the one that said it to you about perfect divine timing and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not doubting that. I'm just being human for a second to say this is not a spiritual bypass situation where I am trying to make the best of the situation. but I do agree because of how this all happened, and everybody knows. I mean, it couldn't have happened any more perfectly in the way that it did. But that doesn't mean that there's still not pain that we're still going through and uncovering and
Yes.
learning and reflecting, because I don't want to go through that again, and you don't want to go through it
No.
again.
No.
And
I'm not saying it was good, but man, if you look back, it played out like an amazingly well played screenplay. It was amazing, and it has been, and it continues to be amazing with all of the shapes and shifting and everything that's going on in both of our lives. It is tremendous how this life has been scripted for us recently.
so, obviously, you know, we're talkers. We could probably talk all night long. And so to make the show not 2 hours long, we just wanted to review the show a little bit with you guys in order for you to hear even just my response to my own show, right? That months ago I recorded and 2 days ago heard again for the first time. And I wanted to hear Doug's perspective on it. I wanted to hear his, because no one else had heard it but me and Harville. And I wanted to start the conversation because it's a conversation worth having. And I know I said it on the show, and I'll say it again. We are going to do that exercise, that creating your IMAGO exercise at the next big step. And I really think any of you out there that struggle with any of this, you know, the reason to come to a live event is not because I'm asking you to or because it's a limited room, but you don't know what you don't know. And if you haven't been in a room full of like-minded people on a similar journey with similar pains as you haven't felt the connection and that sacred rest piece of people who can really hold the space for you unlike anyone else can. And there is a magic that happens when we commune like that. It's a really special thing that most of us don't take the time or investment to do in our lives. And then we go through 10s and 20 years and wonder where the magic is, because we don't take time to do things like this. We go on a vacation with our family or our spouse or a friend, and we have our surface chatting and maybe some deep chatting, but it's not a transformative experience necessarily. And that's what's being created. So whether you can come live or you buy a virtual ticket, what comes with this is a 3-month of accountability that you're going to get to actually do the work. So if you're doing the virtual ticket, which again, no matter where you are, you can still be a part of this and connect and have an experience and get some of the clearings from Lisa and all the good things that's going to happen and go through this exercise. Like I said before, can you buy the workbook? Of course you can. Can you do it on your own? Of course you can. But when you're in a room full of 50 people who are doing the same exact exercise
It's a beautiful thing.
And having insights and ahas and breakthroughs, and you're going to get a level of insight that you cannot get in a therapy session, one-on-one with a therapist, or with yourself or your spouse and the book. I'm just telling you right now. So consider coming to the event, consider doing the virtual ticket, and if this is well after September 2018, this will be turned into a evergreen product that you can buy at any point in time, no matter what year it is, no matter what month it is, and no matter what's going on. You can still be a part of the event and use these teachings as a course that you can do on your own. So stay tuned for more. We have lots of stuff to talk about.
Hey, it's great being in bed with you.
We are fully clothed. This is not X-rated, except Doug's mouth from time to time and some of the things that he says.
Wait till we turn off the microphone.
Wow. All right, so we'll see you back here next week, everybody.
That was a good cat.
Thank you for listening to today's episode, and I just want to remind you we have very limited spots left for the next big step. Come on over to jjflizanes.com/next big step to get your live ticket or your virtual ticket if you can't make it to LA, so you can get all the same information in the comfort of your own home. jjflizanes.com/next big step.